We're going to start our discussion on motivation by giving a definition that is practical both at home and at work. Motivation is a personal choice to invest effort and energy into something for a payoff. Recently, we learned that this definition has two very important dimensions. The first dimension is an inside dimension of motivation. That is, the needs and drives that lie inside of individual people. These supply the drive. An outside dimension is the goals that the person sets up in order to satisfy the needs. In order to totally understand human behavior and motivation, we must look at both parts. For example, many people are motivated to work simply to survive, to meet their basic needs for food, shelter, clothing, and so forth. These people, with these needs, set up goals that they structure in order to meet the needs. They work in order to perhaps earn a paycheck in order to buy the things they need. A prestigious university did a study on why people were motivated. What the study found was that frequently we misuse the words. You may hear supervisors say, employee A is not motivated. But what the study found was that employee A might be highly motivated, but motivated to do nothing. It's in terms of the organizational goals that the person appears to be not motivated. In terms of their own goals, however, the person is highly motivated. The study showed that there appears to be 7 reasons why people appear to not be motivated. If any two are present, motivation will not occur. They are as follows. 1. The goal is too distant. 2. The payoff is too small. 3. The path to the goal is too difficult. 4. The goal satisfies no personal need. 5. The need can be satisfied by a different goal. 6. The person works on lower-level needs. 7. There is a need denial. It appeared that these 7 reasons are like a huge tent which covered nearly every aspect of human behavior. Let's examine these 7 reasons in more depth. You should take notes. The first one is where the goal is too distant. The study showed that the goals that were less than 30 days away seemed to be the most motivating. And the more immediate the goal, the more motivating effect it seemed to have. When we look at most organizational goals, we find they are structured by and large on an annual basis. For example, a salesperson may have to make 10,000 calls in a year in order to make the sales quota. It's frequently found that it's in the last part of the year that most of the calls get made and most of the sales are closed. In order to overcome this barrier, many organizations structure sales goals and objectives on a 30-day basis. They take the annual goal and divide it up into 12 parts. The person is then measured on a monthly basis, as opposed to an annual basis. The goals that are only 30 days or less away appear to be most motivational. The second reason is that the payoff is too small. For example, if an employee hears from his or her supervisor, next year, if you work twice as hard, you may receive as much as a 2% increase in pay. Now, many people would feel that this would not be very motivational. People seem to go through a psychic scale where they weigh the amount of effort required against the payoff for accomplishment. If the payoff is too small, the goal will not serve to motivate the employee. The third reason is that if the path to the goal is too difficult. Many people would feel that it would be extremely desirable as a goal to perhaps double, triple, or quadruple their annual incomes by going into a profession with much higher pay. There is a reason, however, why they do not do this. Usually, it's because the path is too difficult to achieve the goal. For example, if the person who is making a modest salary every year decided that they would rather quit their job and go into a more lucrative profession, may find that this is impossible because of the long and expensive and perhaps restrictive education requirements needed in order to gain the license or certification needed to practice in that profession. As a result, they usually do not find themselves motivated to make the move. Number 4, if the goal satisfies no personal need. Many people have experienced an executive of an organization addressing employees in a large group and stating something along the lines of, "If we all redouble our efforts, we'll increase our market share by 29%. The employees in the audience frequently react by looking at each other in disbelief. What we know from the study is that organizational goals are really pretty worthless unless they give high payoff to the needs people have as people. Increasing market share may not be a need held by an individual employee. By contrast, if the employee were to receive a very high cash bonus for the accomplishment of the increased market share, and in fact were able to affect that goal, then they may become very motivated by that organizational goal because it is linked to their personal needs that they have. Number 5, the need can be satisfied by a different goal. For example, one secretary in a company may have a need for recognition, which is the same need that another secretary in that company has. Both have high needs for recognition. One may choose, however, to meet her needs or his needs by recognizing one of them as being the best secretary in the organization. The other could perhaps choose to meet his or her needs for recognition by being known as the fastest driver in town. This condition creates the most difficulties for supervisors, since it is very difficult for the supervisor to recognize what goals the individuals set up for themselves to meet their needs. The 6th condition is that the person works on lower-level needs. This suggests the hierarchy of human needs, which we'll examine in a minute. The 7th condition is need denial. Frequently, people will deny that they have needs, usually because of fear of change. This is often the case for workers when asked to participate in planning and goal setting by their supervisors. Frequently, they choose to deny that they have any need to participate. They say, "That problem is the supervisor's. That's the boss's job to solve." This need denial may be because of fear of change. An employee may be very, very comfortable letting the success or failure of the operation lie with the supervisor, and be very reluctant to take on a responsibility for the success or failure of a program which they participated in the planning stage. It may be more comfortable to just let the supervisor do all the planning and take all the responsibility, and thereby avoid feeling affected or responsible if the program fails. We said a moment ago that if the person operates on lower-level needs, they may not be motivated. This suggests Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. For years, this was the cornerstone of motivational theory taught to most managers and supervisors. You'll see what these needs are and how they form a pyramid from lower-level needs to higher-level needs. Let's examine them. The lower level of needs is the tissue needs. These are the needs to have something to eat, a place to sleep, air to breathe, and so on. These are basic physiological needs that every person has. The next higher level of needs is the security needs. People tend to be very selfish. If they live one day, they want to live longer. These are the needs that people have to protect the source of satisfaction of the tissue needs. The third level of needs is the social needs. Most people don't like to be alone for long periods of time. People enjoy interaction with others and will be motivated to engage in social situations. The next level has the ego needs. Most people don't like to see themselves as being satisfactory or average. People like to feel superior, at least on some level, to other people. They want to feel special in some way, which does not mean that all people need to feel superior on all levels. It just means that on some level or in some area, they want to feel special. For example, some employees are highly motivated by ego needs to do the best possible job in their profession, to be the best salesperson, to be the best nurse, to be the best welder, to be the best secretary, whatever, and to be recognized as such. Other people meet their ego needs by being known as excellent skiers, or perhaps excellent cooks, or perhaps excellent amateur musicians. The highest level of need is what we call total self. Total self is different for different people. It seems that we all have a vision of what we could be. We all dream of being the best possible person we can ever be. We have a need to make these dreams and hopes come true. Thus far in this unit, we have seen that motivation is a personal choice to invest effort and energy into something for payoff. And motivation appears to have two dimensions: an inside dimension that relates to the needs and drives that lie within the individual person, and an outside dimension, which are the goals which the person sets up to satisfy the needs. We saw that there were 7 conditions under which a person may appear to not be motivated. These conditions related to these inside and outside dimensions in various ways. We will now briefly turn our attention to the outside dimension in more detail. The outside dimension is primarily concerned with goals. A supervisor will find it impossible to actually see the inside dimension of motivation. All any supervisor, or any person for that matter, can actually see is behavior that people exhibit. Behavior is quite simply anything a person says or does. Supervisors can observe behavior. Supervisors cannot, however, observe things like attitudes and needs. Attitudes and needs can only be inferred by observing the behavior of other people. In order to understand behavior and what a supervisor can do to influence behavior of other people, it's first important to understand the behavioral model. The behavioral model is concerned only with the outside dimension of motivation. The 3 pieces of this behavioral model are antecedents, behaviors, and consequences. An antecedent is anything that gets a behavior going. A behavior is anything people say or do. And consequences are effects that a person sees or feels following a behavior. You may wish to note a few examples of antecedents. Antecedents are things people experience that stimulate them to do something or say something. For example, a stop sign may stimulate a person to stop their automobile at the intersection. A telephone request for sales information would stimulate an employee to try to provide the needed help. Instructions given by a supervisor to a new employee would be an antecedent to help the employee to perform the job as expected. Directions, objectives, and goals that the organization provides and communicates to an employee are also very important and powerful antecedent conditions. Quite simply, if a person does not have a particular goal, it will not stimulate behavior toward that goal. Examples of antecedents are numerous in any organizational setting. Behaviors are simply things people say or do. For example, the number of items produced in a week, the number of patient care plans that are written by a nurse, simply appearing at a meeting on time, making a telephone appointment for a sales call, giving a response to a question. Behaviors are, by their very nature, observable, and at some level, measurable. It's important to note that traits are not behaviors. Traits are things like initiative, cooperation, enthusiasm, attitudes. These are simply not behaviors. It is impossible to see a poor attitude, to see enthusiasm, to see cooperation, or to see initiative. These are traits. What a supervisor can see are various behaviors from which the supervisor may infer that the person has a good attitude, is enthusiastic, is cooperative, or shows initiative. Consequences are effects a person sees or feels following a behavior. Consequences are very powerful in controlling performance. Consequences include things such as praise, a high rating, a letter of commendation, respect from peers, pay increases, sales call appointments granted by customers, and so on are all positive consequences. Positive consequences tend to reinforce the behaviors. Negative consequences are things such as criticism, ignoring performance, receiving a warning, or the customer hangs up without granting the sales call appointment. There are 3 supervisory guidelines essential to applying the behavioral model. The first guideline is that behaviors that are followed by positive consequences or rewards tend to be repeated. Number 2, behaviors that are followed by neutral consequences, ignored, or negative consequences, punishment, tend to be not repeated. And number 3, antecedents and consequences can be controlled by the supervisor in order to influence proper employee performance. Let's take some examples. In example number 1, the supervisor schedules a staff meeting at 9 a.m. The behaviors are that all people are on time to the meeting, and the consequences are that the supervisor compliments everyone on their punctuality. The effect of this is that people are more likely to be on time at subsequent meetings. In example number 2, we see the same antecedent and behavior. However, the consequence is different. In number 2, the supervisor schedules a staff meeting at 9, and the behaviors are that all people are on time to the meeting. And the consequences are that the supervisor ignores the timeliness and starts the meeting. The effect of this is that behaviors that are ignored tend to go away over time. The probability or chance that people will be on time to the staff meeting has just been reduced. In example number 3, the supervisor schedules the staff meeting at 9. Half the staff is 10 minutes late, and half is on time. The supervisor takes the 10 minutes to assign all the difficult and frustrating work to the people who were on time, and the easy work was left for the people who came late. The on-time people get the most difficult and frustrating work. The effect of this may be that the people who were on time would perceive their timeliness as being punishing, since they got stuck with all the difficult and frustrating work. The probability that they will be on time to the next staff meeting is now lower. The chances are greater now that they will come later to the next meeting in order to avoid being assigned the difficult work. These 3 examples exemplify the 3 guidelines. 1. Behaviors that are followed by positive consequences or rewards tend to be repeated. 2. Behaviors that are followed by neutral consequences or negative consequences tend to not be repeated. And 3. That the antecedents and consequences could all be controlled by the supervisor in order to influence proper employee performance, which is to be on time to the staff meeting. Here we have a short exercise on the behavioral model. Please read along with me as I review the first part of the exercise with you. The antecedent is that at a quality circle meeting, the supervisor asks for suggestions for solving a problem the department is having. The behavior is that Alice, an employee, eagerly makes a good suggestion. Please read the following possible consequences and check whether or not Alice's behavior is likely to be repeated in subsequent meetings. Let's review the probability of Alice's repeating the behavior for each of the 3 possible consequences and the choices you should have checked. In possible consequence number 1, the supervisor immediately says, "Our management will never allow that." The probability of Alice's repeating the behavior is lower. In possible consequence number 2, right after the meeting, a co-worker friend snidely accuses Alice of bucking for a promotion and refuses to sit with her at coffee break, as they usually do. The probability of Alice's repeating the behavior is also lower. For possible consequence number 3, where immediately the supervisor praises Alice for making a suggestion by stating, "We will try to work out the details with higher management, as it will make the department's work easier and more productive," the probability of Alice's repeating the behavior is higher. We can see that Alice's behavior, when followed by positive consequences, tends to lead Alice to repeat the behavior. When followed by negative consequences, the behavior is likely to not be repeated. You may have noticed that there is a difference between possible consequence numbers 1 and 3 and possible consequence number 2. Consequences 1 and 3 were totally within the supervisor's control. Here, the supervisor had either an opportunity to reward or to punish Alice for her behavior. In possible consequence number 2, behaviors of other employees after the meeting could have a negative effect on Alice's motivation. This points out that there are organizational factors beyond the supervisor's direct control. However, by being aware of them, the supervisor can take steps to minimize the negative effects that these consequences can have upon employees.